My name is Mark Hemmerle. I'm Chief Legal Officer for two fintech companies out of Vegas. One is called Koin. Kind of think of PayPal meets Every meets Discover as a product for resort wallets, both in and out, non-gaming and gaming. And then Trax, which is a digital marker capability, connects with casino management systems, automatically debits and credits based on the lines of credit that you want to offer players. And as Wolf just mentioned, I just started a few months ago, so probably stuff hasn't been updated all the way around. But just one thing I want to just point out, one of the really great things about events like this is, yes, coming and sharing some knowledge, but it's also taking the time to meet the person next to you, especially if it's somebody you don't know, whether it's after this thing when it's, out there having a cup of coffee, whether it's the events tonight. Take the opportunity to meet folks you don't know, because that really is one of the really great benefits of an event like this. So I highly, highly encourage that you do that. So Jen, why don't you come up, grab a seat, and we'll kind of jump in here. Our goal tonight, or this morning, is to talk about partnerships. When we're dealing with tribes, as you heard earlier with Oscar, there are some nuances, some cultural things that we want to keep in mind when we're working with tribes. But more importantly, just kind of what are some of those practical things that you can do, examples of some things that have not gone well. I think Oscar and Joe may have some stories there as well. But, just things to be mindful of relative to doing business. If you're a multinational company, you think about it when you're going into new countries, and this is pretty much the same idea. So to my left, Thomas, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Thomas Castleberry. I'm the Vice President of Sales for a company called Anaxi, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Aristocrat Technologies, which is the largest gaming supplier in the world.
And your division does?
Oh, I'm sorry. I specialize in iGaming and digital content.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Bonjour. Good morning. Jigewe Gabo Indijnakas, Nayquonabe Indigu, Mayin Gun and Dudame, Mrs. Agaganing and Dunjaba, Nisa Wug and Donasug, Ajwana Kudukwe, Minawa Ogama Obikwe, Minawa Ogama Sekwe, Nubidageo Ma, Mrs. Agaganing. So my name is Joe Nayquonabe. I'm the CEO of Mille Corporate Ventures. We're the business and economic development arm of the Mille Band of Ojibwe. We're a holding company that owns and operates in several different lines of business, including gaming. I think we always say there's no dollar like a gaming dollar, so we still very much love our gaming companies. And it's a pleasure to be here this morning.
Thanks for this, Oscar.
Good morning again. Oscar Schuyler, enrolled member of Oneida Tribe of Wisconsin, currently the executive director at the Alabama-Coushatta Tribe of Texas, in Indian gaming for just over 30 years now.
So, Oscar, I'd like to start with you since you were involved with the previous panel, because I see there are a number of folks that weren't in the previous meeting. Can you give us just a real high overview of some of kind of the key things that are unique from a tribal gaming perspective that we might not think of when we're talking about commercial gaming?
Well, probably the biggest thing is that there's no one owner. Being an enrolled Oneida tribal member of Wisconsin, I'm literally, part owner technically of our casino. So there's not one person really. Our community benefits from our casino operation. Probably the other thing too is a lot of tribes don't do things quickly. There's some hoops you got to jump through and some red tape. So I just always tell everybody, you got to be patient as we do our due diligence and we try to see through the red tape that we need to go through to go into business with somebody or a company. So just a couple of things, really.
Sure. Joe, when we think about tribal gaming, coming from the legal and regulatory side a little bit, there are some important distinctions. We heard about sovereign immunity earlier, but again, for some folks that may be new in this panel, can you walk through kind of how some of the nuances associated with the regulations and the laws affecting a relationship with a tribe that folks need to be mindful of?
Sure. I think that I think there's really three different governments that we operate in. There's the tribal government, so there's going to be, in our case, there's a whole system of titles that organizes how we do business as a tribe. I think being cognizant of all of those laws is really step number one when partnering with the tribe. Understand what the jurisdiction of the tribe is going to prefer. What are the various codes that we have that are going to regulate the partnership? And I think what Mille Lacs has done well, and I think a lot of tribal nations have done well to instill confidence in partners and investors, is really to make sure that there is a robust code of law. The Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe is really a separations of powers government. So there is a legislative branch, an executive branch, and then a very powerful judicial branch. And I think what that does is it just instills and gives confidence to people that want to do business in Indian country when that robust tribal jurisdiction exists. After that, there's state laws and regulations. I think you guys really hit on IGRA. IGRA was kind of a catch-22, right? Like it gave some credence to the fact that there was going to be Indian gaming. It also forced tribes to deal with states, which is really an overstep of our sovereignty. But there is, so like it or not, we do have to deal with state governments as well, and that's another aspect of dealing with tribes. And then finally, there's federal regulations, obviously, in this case at the IGRA level, and also with some of the different mix and things that we have to deal with at the NIGC level as well. So I think just having an understanding that there are these levels of different jurisdictions when doing business in Indian country is an important thing to know.
Gotcha. From stepping back from kind of that regulatory structure and framework, each of the tribes seems to have its own traditions, languages, cultures. How impactful is understanding that and being aware of that relevant to the partnership that a company is trying to develop with the tribe?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think there's just recognizing that we've been, and again, I'll just speak in the Mille Lacs case. I know Oneida's got a really rich history over there, also in Anishinaabe territory. But we've been there caring for that land for, well over 300 years in the case of Mille Lacs. So there are all these really rich, beautiful things in the way that we look at the land and the way we look at the role that we play for our nation. So I think it's always great to make sure you're understanding that when approaching Indian country. And I think a lot of companies do a really good job of that. I think a lot of companies really respect. There's a mystique about Indian country that companies understand and like to know about and like to learn more about. I think the one language that I think is sometimes missing when businesses approach Indian country is the other language we speak is growth. Like we don't just want to grow our companies; we have to grow our companies. I think in the Midwest region, it's called the St. Paul region, as reported by the National Indian Gaming Commission. We've been growing in that region at about 3.8% for the last few years, and that growth is not enough to sustain the growth of our tribe. Our tribe is growing at over 5% every year. And when you think about what Oscar just said in the last session, our gaming revenues that literally is the tax base and the lifeblood of the tribe. Those are the things that are powering education. Those are the things that are powering healthcare. Those are the things that are powering the future of tribes. So when you have your tribal population growing at 5%, but your market from a brick and mortar perspective is only growing at 3.8%, that creates a real problem for the tribe to execute on their mission, which is to improve the quality of life of our citizens. So that's why some of these things, so I think companies need to understand the situational analysis of where tribes are when they're approaching them. If you're talking to a tribe in California or you're talking to a tribe with 40 members, that's different than talking to a tribe in Minnesota or a tribe with 25,000 members. So just understanding the situational analysis, as well as some of these cultural things that you talked about, Mark, or that you mentioned on the get-go, Mark. I think there's a balance there that people approaching Indian country have to have. We are great, beautiful people that are stewards of our lands, we're also really shrewd, determined business people that need to grow our companies. So I think you got to come with that when you're coming into Indian country.
So Thomas, let me turn to you since you're on the commercial side here. Aristocrat, obviously a multinational company dealing with lots of countries, lots of cultures, lots of people. Do you, from your broad experience, does that tend to help with a company coming into the tribal arena, having these broad aspects of doing business around the world, or is it sufficiently unique in the U.S. that you just got to get it figured out as you're going?
Great question. So what I would say is it's not necessarily unique. We treat our tribal partners just like any other sovereign country or international country. We operate in hundreds of jurisdictions worldwide, and what we do is we make sure we're partnering with our tribal partners. We don't try to come in as the 800-pound gorilla and say this is the way it's going to be, this is the way our contracts are going to be. We're very conscious to sovereign recognition and working with our tribal partners to make sure that we're providing the best possible solutions, not just saying this is our widget we're trying to sell, or this is the game we're trying to sell, and you have to take it as is. From tribal partner to tribal partner, we typically customize the games to make sure it matches and meets their needs, because they do typically have unique needs based on their location or their types of players. So we take a very hands-on partner approach, and as Joe and Oscar kind of mentioned, it's not difficult to do business with tribal partners. It starts with being transparent, honest, having a good engagement, not just trying to push a widget to them, but understand their business. What are their needs? What are they looking for? What are they trying to accomplish? Hearing that that their member base is outpacing their growth. How can we help them grow their revenues? It may not just be selling a widget, but maybe partnering in strategic initiatives or JVs or some other mechanism that helps them grow their tribal business, and it may even be outside gaming. Could be in the non-gaming sector, because the gaming funds so much of the non-gaming. There may be ways that we as an organization can help partner to just help be more strategic.
Early when, especially on the gaming side, as companies started coming in and working with tribes, there was this fear of sovereign immunity and what that meant, and would a tribe really, when there's a problem with an agreement, just say you have no recourse, you can't sue us, you can't do anything. I was there, 20 years ago, working on contracts and trying to think about what's the real exposure here. In your experiences on the tribal side and on the commercial side, has that really come into play as a problem, or is it more of an esoteric concern? Not that sovereign immunity isn't important, but has it really ever been used to, for lack of a better word, screw up a relationship? Have tribes really used that defensively?
I'd jump in.
Yeah, please.
From a commercial standpoint, to your point, Mark, 20 years ago, organizations were less mature in terms of understanding sovereign recognition, contracts, mediation, arbitration, those types of things. But I would say in the last decade, it's matured out. And businesses, whether you're going into New Jersey, Michigan, Pennsylvania, each state has its own municipalities, laws, and so if you're coming from an outside and your contract or your legal entity is, for me, it's Nevada-based, right? If I'm doing business in New Jersey, I would almost say the same thing, whether it's sovereign recognition or the state of New Jersey. Am I really worried about the law of that jurisdiction, emboldening me or preventing me from being able to have a fair treatment? It's unrealistic to say that a tribe would be any different, given what Joe just shared. They have checks and balances within their organization. It's very public. You can research it. You can go to their websites. You can work with their legal entities to understand their ways of working, their rules of engagement, their checks and balances. So my point is, there's no different with tribal law than there really is with state law. And there's typically in the contracts, the tribes will work with you to make sure that there are other ways of mediation, arbitration before you even get to a legal recourse.
Yeah, and to add to that, I would say in most cases there's a very limited waiver of sovereign immunity that's really, it doesn't, in our case, it really just binds the company. It doesn't bind the tribe. and in almost every single case, it's very specific to a certain contract or agreement and the terms that are in the contract or agreement. So unless we really just don't like you or you are a complete asshole, things should go pretty well.
Or if you're doing something malicious in the first place.
If you're doing something malicious, then and it's going to be real bad.
Oscar?
And along with that too, most, or not most, but a lot of tribes have their own court system. So that language is usually put into those agreements that, like you said, the arbitration or anything like that will go through the tribal court. So
it's like doing business with the state government for lottery or whatever. I think it's not the boogeyman that people think that it is. It's recognizing that there's a sovereign entity that you're doing business with, but you have a commercial relationship. You're trying to accomplish something. The tribes aren't out there to screw vendors over. It's to protect the assets and to continue to grow the base of everything that you're doing for all the tribal members.
Yeah, and that's part of our sovereignty too, is to hold that and to have it on to our court system. I mean, we have fully capable judges within our courts. Mille, I'm sure. We have it down in Texas. A good friend of mine, and mentor, and I think Val probably heard him say this many times, but Rick Hill used to always say, for Indians, how can you get a fair trial on stolen land? And he just used to say that wherever he could preach it, he would say it, and Rick's a former chairman of IGA now, I still call it IGA, but that's what he used to say, and I think that's what some companies were always afraid of, is that, how are they going to get a fair shake, going through tribal court, but our tribal court has the same standards as some of the regular courts. So even more so, and I go back to gaming. I've always said, and Dave knows this, that when it comes to tribes and it comes to gaming, we regulate our stuff. That's us. That's my job. And I've told NIGC for years, stay out of here. We don't need you. That's what we get paid to do. That's my job. So, sorry to get off on regulation, but
well, it's a good point, because you have so many different parts, and part of that is understanding how you have to do business, right? So if there's waivers of standards or NIGC you've got to go through, or there's just different things that may cause a contract to slow down or to speed up or cause delays.
Yeah, and some of those contracts too will come through gaming. So if they're the gaming contract, some of them will actually come through the gaming commission or come through the gaming authority to either mediate or resolve.
Yep. So. Thomas, when we were talking in prep for this, you kept using the word trust.
Yep.
How does that play into all of this?
Well, I've been working with tribal First Nation countries for over 20 years, from startups to large organizations, and it's about building trust, building a rapport. Whether you're an individual or an organization, it's delivering on your commitments. And there's times where you're going to miss those commitments. I can guarantee you, over 20 years, I haven't delivered on all of our commitments, but we've made it right, whether it was in a small organization or a big organization. And it's communicating effectively. It's being present. It's understanding business, understanding impacts of missing deliverables, whether it's product or process or services, and just being open, fair, and transparent with your partners so that they can plan accordingly.
Yeah, I'd like that. I'd build on that. I think there are really two important components of trust. Number one is competency. So I think if you're a competent business, and if you have a competent vision of where you're taking your company and how a tribal partner fits into the growth that you're trying to achieve, I think that's really important. That's normally what gets sold by folks that are approaching Indian country. The second component is compassion. So I think the best partners that we have at Mille Corporate Ventures, the longest term partners that we have, are people that are very compassionate to Indian country. They're compassionate to the situation that we're in. They lean in to the things that are going on in Indian country. If some of the things that were talked about in the last session, if there's all these really great things that have happened in Indian gaming, we also deal with first-generation wealth issues, where there are still these social ills and these things that really hurt tribes. In fact, in Minnesota, if there's an opioid epidemic in the state of Minnesota, there's an opioid epidemic based in this country. In Minnesota, if there's an opioid overdose that happens every 20 seconds in the state, and the receiving end of that, an American Indian is 5 times more likely to be the person having that overdose. So when you think about those type of problems, it's the partners that are compassionate to that understand that that's something that we need to tackle as tribal people. Those are the folks that have the best track record of building trust. So it's really a function of competency and compassion.
That's huge. The drug problem it's not just on Mille Lacs, it's at Oneida, it's rampant. That's probably the biggest thing that tribes are facing right now, in my opinion. I know it's hit my family personally, so it's something that's near and dear to my heart. But it's really, for tribes, it's really almost an epidemic standards to the effect that it's having on reservations. It's crazy.
Oscar, when we talk about partnerships, you've obviously been doing this for a while. Do you have some examples of some ones that have worked out well and some that have just flopped?
When I was on the commission at Oneida. Well, this was a while ago, so I probably don't remember. So when I was on the commission, the general manager would usually call and say, "Hey, we want to meet with this company and see what you guys think and all this stuff." So we met. I think it was for lunch. So the vendor we were meeting with said, "Hey, I'm running late. I can't find your hotel." I'm just like, "Can't find our hotel." So they get there, they come in, we sit down, and they're doing their pitch, and I say, "You had a hard time finding our hotel?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Oh, you mean you couldn't just walk through the lobby and come down here? So you didn't stay at our hotel? So you're here pitching us for, a couple of $1 million worth of business, but you wouldn't want to spend $109 to stay at our hotel?" I said, "Okay." So that meeting was really probably done before it even started. So we listened to it, and that wasn't a good, because even during the conversation, we're like, we stayed here, we got our points and all this stuff. So, okay, well, I'm glad you got your points, but, the conversation that I had with the general manager, who's a good friend of mine, who's still the general manager today, just said, couldn't believe it, that they went and stayed at another hotel. I said, yeah, for $109, they're going to throw their business out the window, and they weren't even chosen. And it really was because of that. That was an issue.
So recognizing that broader relationship perspective.
Yeah, so and like I said, it was literally over because I think it was like Hampton, I think it was like Hampton points that they got. So
that free breakfast, man.
Right? And literally our hotel is connected to our casino, like most properties, so it would have been just coming down the elevator, going into the restaurant, but you can't fake stupid. So.
Any situation that stands out as where a partner went above and beyond? And while you're thinking, Joe, jump in if you...
Yeah, I think one of my favorite partnerships we have is with the University of Minnesota Carlson School of Management. They have a really outstanding Masters of Data Science program there, where they're recruiting students from all over the world, bringing that talent into the Twin Cities. We have one of the biggest concentrations of Fortune 500 companies per capita. I think we are the biggest. And so there's all these companies that are grabbing these data scientists, including Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures. So we were able to build our entire data science division really just through this partnership where students get a chance to work on a project every year. So we're giving them this real life experience as they're on their journey to complete their academic exercises. And then beyond that, they've been helping us place, and they've been a pipeline for us to take and build talent. And I would just say that's been a huge unlock for us. It helps us think differently about data, but it also helps us think differently about business. And we just have this constant pipeline of talent kind of coming into our organization. It's been a huge unlock for us.
And it touches other parts of the tribe, what you're trying to do by incorporating that into the education process. That's awesome. Thomas, any situations that kind of stand out for you of we nailed it, or I heard somebody else blew it, or?
So we agreed in advance that we weren't going to talk about Aristocrat being their favorite partner. So I'm going to use one of my prior careers. Buffalo. Sorry. So what I really want, kind of push is that you don't have to be a Fortune 500 company to do business with a sovereign country. So when I was early in my, early startups, we actually did an innovation with Milex. Exactly. We actually did innovation right there. And when you think of something as simple as, text messaging when you get to your hotel room or to your food and beverage, Milex was our first partner to go live with that. And it's now kind of, you think of that, globally, that's something that really started right there in tribal territory with our partnership as a startup. And that was an amazing example of how a small company partnered with a tribal entity to deliver something that is now kind of globally just standard. That was a pretty exciting venture. So like I said, you don't have to be a Fortune 500 company just to do business in the tribal markets.
And one of the things just from personal experience over the years that I've found working on different vendors in different situations or supporting vendors, working with the tribes to try something new is so much easier than working with a state regulatory body. I'm sure it's changed a little bit, but the tribes have always seemed more willing to take a risk. Let's try it, see if it works. And it's just been a wonderful testing opportunity for different things. And again, both parties win. I know we're hitting up the time limit. I apologize, I didn't ask for any questions, but if anybody has anything they want to talk about or ask, please feel free or hit us up afterwards. And kind of hitting on that data idea, 12:30, we're going to be talking about all the data that comes through a casino, especially on the tribal side, and things that can be done with it. So little segue and plug for 12:30 this afternoon. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks, Aaron.